Grab our seats. We have a lot of, I think, people sleeping in. They're going to be snoozing in here in the next few minutes, but we'll get started for our live stream audience. I know many of our members online today are tuning in from California, West Coast, Midwest, all time zones. So I know for some of you guys, it is 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, and you guys are up early, part of the 5 a.m. crew. I want to welcome our in-person members here. This is going to be a packed room in probably about 10 or 15 minutes. So good job on scoping out your spots right now. You will need a notepad throughout today. So I would suggest, while I'm doing the introductions, heading out and getting your notepad ready because you're taking lots of notes today. And we'll go ahead and get rolling. This is going to be our February workshop. We have a lot going on this weekend. We have a 2-day session today. In this room, then we're going to have a 2-day mastermind of 7th Division in the next room as well. What we're going to be covering in here specifically are going to be a lot of tools and communication protocols you can put in place for patient communication, for day 1, day 2, front desk, handling patient objections, as well as giving you guys all the tools you need to have just kick butt March and April promotions to drive lots of new patients into the office. So just kind of a point of context, this morning, Dr. Gary will be joining us in about 5 or 10 minutes, and he will be going over the first hour, basically how to build rapport with anybody using what we call the ARC triangle. It's a simple communication system to build rapport, resolve conflict, and connect with others. Crucial for CAs, for front desk, doctors, anybody doing day 1, day 2, even billing staff that are talking to insurance companies. It is the foundation of what makes communication work to build a Ritz-Carlton experience and move patients through their health and wellness journey. After Dr. Gary covers that segment, he'll be moving into what we call the awareness scale. This is the journey that we take a new patient through from walking in the door all the way through to committing to care. In fact, it's a scale that walks you through kind of like the headspace an individual has to go through to go from uncommitted and not too sure which direction they want to go to fully committed to make a change in their health. And it's about 6 to 8 different points you're moving the patient through that the day 1, day 2 process is all about. So that's going to be later this morning. After lunch, I'll be joining Dr. Gary once again, and we're going to be doing a 2-hour objection handle session. So everything from patients dropping off care, anything table side during exams, cash services, front desk, at marketing events. We're going to span everything. So what I want you guys to do this morning is, as you're thinking of what are common objections that your team or yourself are having a hard time getting a patient through at the front desk or anywhere in the office, objections, questions, just areas where the patients stall in their journey to full health and wellness. Write those down, because we're going to be taking all the questions from you guys this afternoon on what you're running into. Myself and Dr. Gary are going to give you guys scripting, communication skills, and everything you need to be able to resolve those issues with your patients. And then this afternoon, I will be with you guys for the final hour and a half. I'm going to go over the March promotions you can run in your office, low cost, no cost marketing you can do to run promotions, themed promotions for the month of March, as well as for April. So the Business Academy has protocols to do internally in your office, SOPs, scripting systems, everything you want to do. Dr. Gary, go ahead and close that door for me, Dr. Gary. Thank you, sir. Awesome. Everything you guys need to run events in your office and promotions inside your office every single month of the year. So January was New Year, New Me promotion for patients setting goals, doing their care program, doing reviews and referring patients. February is the famous, I should say, Super Bowl Frenzy promo that many of you guys had a chance to do in your office. I was working with an office in Indianapolis last couple weeks ago, and they got 54 reviews 5-star in 3 weeks, an additional 9 to 10 referrals, as well as 13 video testimonials and about 14 or 15 social media posts from their patients getting adjusted on their own social pages, tagging the office, which they also got new patients from as well. Just from a simple Super Bowl frenzy that cost them maybe about $500 or $600 in marketing costs for prizes and some stuff from FedEx to print off, and the staff being trained on it. The football frenzies every February, as well as how to host a block party, inviting your entire community for Easter, for an Easter egg hunt extravaganza to bring your patients, former patients, friends, family, kids, community leaders, and members into your office and have a great time. I'm going to go over all the layouts, protocols, prep, promotion, how to run it, how to get lots of new patients from that, as well as afternoon. So it's going to be a jam-packed day with lots of information, a lot of systems to move forward with. Me and Dr. Gary, we tell it to you like how it is. We're going to go rapid fire. It's not a lot of fluff. We're going to be giving you guys systems, protocols, practice, drill, strategy throughout the day. Then tomorrow, we'll be focusing on an all-day session, a workshop session on building out your organizational board, your org chart for your practice, all the way through whether you're a one-man show or you have 6 practices and 30 staff. Who's in charge of what needs to get done in the office, who's doing what does that result in, right? Key performance indicators, valuable final products, and how do we measure it through performance stats in the office? We're going to be covering all that and actually implementing that. So tomorrow, for those that are attending, make sure to bring your laptops. You're going to have your laptop. It's going to be 10% talking, 90% working through those formats for your office. So if you're going to be here tomorrow for the organizing board talk, bring your laptop. Otherwise, you're just going to be sitting there staring at me while we're all working together on our org chart. If you already have one, like Dr. Betts, I know you already have an org board already set up for your practices. We can tweak it, update it, make sure it's reflective of current operations. All right. So with that being said, what I want you guys to do first as we launch today's place is I'd like to have you guys. Yep, no problem. I would like to have you guys take your notes out or take our first set of notes for the weekend, and we're going to focus our attention on one very important thing. Good morning, guys. I'll have you guys make sure your mics are muted back home if you can. By the way, good to see Amy, Canada's in the house. Dr. Duff, Boulder, Colorado. Good to see you guys. We got Mile High in the house, Denver, Colorado. Hey, Stacy, what's up? Good to see you. Awesome. And I can't tell who the other office is there. There they are. Who's that? Unmute your microphone and tell me who you are. Jump over to the mic and tell me who you are, guys. I'd love to see you guys. Unmute, and I can't quite make out who that is. Great to see everybody here. Awesome. I know it's early for some of you guys. Dr. Duff, 7 a.m. One more time. Yeah, they're here. Awesome. Perfect. Good. Well, I appreciate you guys getting up early, getting your notes ready, and you guys ready to rock and roll. Welcome, guys. Take a seat. And we'll go ahead and kick off today's session. So with that being said, this man needs no introduction. He not only has taken his practice to a multi-practice, 7-figure office, staff-driven, phase 2. There's a reason you guys always see him out here. A, because he lives in the cold in Denver, Colorado, but he loves the warmth over here in Florida. He's here pretty much half the time, and there's a reason that he's here 2 to 3 weeks out of the month, every single month. And you go, well, how do you run an office part-time? And you go, well, he has a team that runs his office full-time. He has systems in place that the team operates off of. He has multiple companies, multiple business, including his practices. And he's here today with you guys to share some insight, TBA systems, and to help mentor us to our goals. So with that being said, to discuss the ARC triangle first thing this morning, go ahead and welcome to the front our good friend, Dr. Gary Rademacher.
Thank you. Awesome. Good morning. So really quickly, since we have a small group, I want to, and hello everyone at home. You guys are awesome. A lot of commitment to jump on this stuff. So it's good to see you guys. So I'm going to say that this topic that we're going to be going over on ARC and communication, when I first took it, like when I first joined the Business Academy back in 2005, I joined it because I was really struggling with my report of findings, and I had like a 35% close rate. I really sucked, and it was not fun. Like, when you're getting rejected all the time, if you feel like it's like a rejection, right? And and so I heard about the Business Academy, and I decided, hey, I'll try it out. So I'll take the report of findings course. And the first thing they started training me on was this ARC, and I was like, I'm sitting there, I was kind of irritated. I was like, what the hell are they talking to me about ARC? What is this ARC thing? What's this? Because I'm thinking, like, give me the report of findings. I wanted the flows. I wanted the scripts, and I didn't realize that. After the fact, after I took all these different courses, I realized I came back to this information and realized this was probably one of the most important, bits of information that I learned. Was this information, just because it was life-changing, because this is such an outpoint in society today, huge outpoint. And the fact of the matter is, if you really understand this information, you can control pretty much any conversation, and that's not just when you're in the office, but in your social life, your family life. It's a game changer, right? So much so that when you learn how to communicate, And when you learn like this whole sales process that we go through, and I know sales is a dirty word, right? A lot of people don't like it, they hear it and they think it's, but really, if you think about it, you're selling all the time. So, like in your best guesstimate, who's the best salesperson that you've ever probably been in contact with? Who? A child. Exactly. 2 years old. Gimme, 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 gimme. They don't stop, right? They don't sell it the first time, they'll ask again and again and again and again, right? But if you think about it, you use these techniques, you use this information, it becomes a part of you, you use it all the time, and you'll create more of a life that you want or what you desire when you're able to actually effectively communicate with people and get what you want from the, socially, from the movie you want to go to, the dinner you want to go to. So with your significant other, like, what are you going to do? It's like, and what kind of compromises do you make? And, if you know ahead of time what you want and what your intentions are, and you effectively communicate, maybe you give up going to that nice, going to the movie you want to see, but you're going to the dinner you wanted to go to, right? The restaurant. So in any case, it's such incredible information. So this ARC triangle, Ron Hubbard came up with this decades ago. The components of understanding, basically. So the component parts of understanding is, so if you look at this triangle, there's this ARC, affinity, reality, and communication. One has to have some affinity for an object, some concept of its reality, and some communication with it before someone can understand it. Okay. So if we, the coming slides will define this more, but if you look at it, affinity, what would you guys say that the definition of affinity is? I'm sorry?
Going on and on.
Affinity? Huh? What else? What else do you guys think? Yeah. Care about them, right? A caring, right? A love for something. Like if someone was said to have high affinity, you'd want to be around it, right? Versus someone with low affinity. Like, let me ask you this. If you put a Democrat and a Republican in the same room, do you think they have high affinity or low affinity? Be really low, right? You put an Eagles fan with a Kansas City Chiefs fan in the same room. What are you going to have, I mean, literally, I joke about that, but I remember I'm from Denver, so I have a friend in San Diego. And we went to a Chargers Broncos game years ago in San Diego. And I had Elway had retired years before, and I had an Elway jersey on. And the Broncos happened to win the game. And I'm walking through the parking lot, to go to the car. And I was scared for my life. It was like, there was real hatred for anyone wearing orange. It's like they take that shit serious. And I don't go to these games that often, but now it's like, wow, these guys are intense. But in any case, affinity, the first component of understanding is the feeling which exists between people or within a person. If affinity between two people is high, we might use the word love as a synonym for this affinity. High affinity includes both love and like, and all feelings of goodwill and kinship. If affinity is low, we may use the word hate as a synonym for this affinity. Okay. So it's a key component to communication. There's so many ways to start a communication cycle. You're either going to, you can start it with any of these three: affinity, reality, communication, right? But has anyone ever come up to you and said that they really liked something about you? Your glasses, maybe an outfit you had on, the shoes that you had, and doesn't it like instantly strike up a conversation? Right? Like for instance, if someone said, "Hey, I really like your shoes. Where'd you get those?" I mean, you wouldn't be wearing those shoes if you don't like them, right? So immediately the affinity goes up. The reality is shoes. I think they're shoes. They think they're shoes. Communication spikes up, and there's an understanding that develops, right? And then you can take that communication to a million different places, right? Affinity expresses the willingness to occupy the same place as the person or thing which is loved or liked. The reverse of it would be antipathy, dislike, or rejection, which would be the unwillingness to occupy the same space as something or someone, or the unwillingness to approach something or someone. The same thing can be true, like on the flip side of that, right? If you've ever seen someone that maybe, there's just something. Have you guys ever seen somebody, there's something about them that you want nothing to do with them, right? I mean, do you go up and start a conversation? I mean, there's like zero communication, right? So it becomes an art form to some degree when you're communicating with people, especially in your office. Like you can use this obviously across all aspects of your life, but when you're talking about your office, when you get into really good ARC with a patient, what happens to the trust level? Trust level goes way up, right? Okay. Where we use this a lot of times, like for instance, we're going to be discussing the awareness scale this weekend. We're going to be just discussing objections this afternoon. And, when someone gives you an objection, wow, that's too expensive. You know how many times I've heard providers say, well, really, it's not that expensive. Well, what just happened there? If a patient says that's expensive and the case manager or the provider says, no, it's really not. It's more expensive if you don't do anything about this. You just have a disagreement there, right? The reality of the patient is it's expensive. The reality of the provider is, no, it's not. Do you think there's really going to be any understanding? No. Right? So you got to be able to actually handle objections from an agreement perspective. Okay. Does that make sense? That's how important this stuff is. When you really understand it, you'll take a step back and realize, oh my gosh, I'm killing cycles with patients because I'm not getting into agreement with them. Okay. There are no strings attached when affinity is given. To the receiver, it carries no duties and no responsibilities. It is pure, easy, and natural and flows out from you as easily as sunlight flows from the sun. Okay. Affinity begets affinity. A person who is filled with the quality which automatically find people anywhere near him also beginning to be filled with affinity. It is a calming, warming, heartening influence on all who are capable of receiving and giving it. Okay. You see people who are very powerful in their space. And one of the first things I look at is like they just have a high affinity for the environment, right? They're able to communicate with anyone on anything and get into some form of agreements. And if you think about it, there's always something about someone that you can actually like. Would you guys agree with that? There's always something, or whether it's, a piece of jewelry, an outfit, a characteristic, and so I think that a key component to getting into really good communication is always looking at what can I like about this person? What can I get into an agreement with this person on? Doesn't mean that you agree on everything, right? But it's something to where, it's especially if you're in a case management position and you want to build that trust, you've got to build that affinity. You got to, that's what gets that communication going. Because if there's a lack of trust, they're not going to communicate with you. If we go back to the 5 objections that you will get, and they always go into these 5 categories. It's money, time, it's either product or the service. It's a stall, or it's the objection you never pull out of them. When you're getting situations where the patient just needs to go home and think about it, they're not fully communicating with you because there's a lack of trust. They're not giving up what that objection is because you haven't made it a safe environment to communicate. It's the same thing with raising your kids. How many of you guys have kids? Okay. Probably the biggest piece of advice I can give you guys is just you have to make it a safe environment for your kids to communicate with you, or else they'll just hide things. They won't tell you, and you see a lot of that, like, kids become rebellious in their teenage years and they don't come back until in their 20s or 30s, right? To where they start opening up more of the communication. And a lot of times that's because, you didn't follow the rules and there was a disagreement and you didn't get into agreements and it was repelling communication. You guys with me on that? So it's making it safe. So you have to make it, now going back to your practice, you have to make it a safe environment for the patient to communicate with you. Okay. Now reality. So this other corner of the triangle is what we call reality. The next component of understanding is reality. Reality is agreement. Agreement with what? It's agreement with anything. It's surprising how much reality is dependent on an agreement between individuals that can object or an idea that exists. So it's just, what's the reality, right? What is the, we can all probably agree that this is a remote control, right? So it's so you can look at physical objects, or it can be an idea. The train derailment in Ohio is horrible. Would you guys agree with that? It's reality situation, right? So it's when we look at that, it's like, the skirting on the table. Look, it's black. Can we agree that it's black, right? So it's just getting into agreement. How can you use that with a patient? Here's where providers will go astray on this sometimes, especially if you're what kind of offices do you all have in here? Any integrated offices in here? Okay. This is where in an integrated setting, and even in a chiropractic setting only, you'll have this issue. Patient comes in, they have low back issues, and through the consultation, you find out that they have an old trauma to their leg. And as chiropractors, we know that many times people have compensations, right? So the patient's sitting in the exam room with low back pain, and the case manager comes out and tells the treating the exam doctor, hey, we got low back issues, but they have a history of trauma. They have a right knee and a right ankle issue as well, but the chief complaint is their low back. Provider goes in, and the first thing they do, now what's the first thing they should do? What should they address first? Chief complaint, right? You know how many times I've seen that doctor, because we have our doctor hat on, and we go right to let's check out this foot and ankle, and the patient is sitting there going, what the F are you doing? I came in for my low back. See, there's an out reality. I'm here for my low back, and this guy or gal is working on my ankle or knee. Okay? It's simple. It's simple things like that lose trust with people. So the more ARC you can get into, the more reality you can get into, the more affinity, the more communicate, the more understanding that you have. Okay? Is that making sense? Is that jiving with everyone? So we'll go over a lot of different scripts as we get through this of how that you use this, like at the front desk in case management as a treating doc. But it's a powerful, powerful tool. And the more that you practice this or come to understanding with it, the more you'll actually create and have in your life. It's your outflow. Like the better you can communicate with your environment, the more outflow you have, the more inflow you'll have. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Communication. The last component of understanding is the heart of life. It is the interchange of ideas between two people or things. Okay. There are two kinds of communication, both depending upon the viewpoint assumed. There is outflowing communication and inflowing communication. A person who is talking to somebody else is communicating to that person we trust, and the person who is being talked to is receiving communication from that person. Now, as the conversation changes, we find the person who has been talked to is now doing the talking and is talking to the first person who is now receiving communication from him. Okay? Now, this is an important concept as well. The reason why I had such a crappy starting percentage years and years ago was because communication is an interchange of ideas. I'm going to speak, you're going to receive it, right? You're going to duplicate it. I have intention, you're going to duplicate it. You're going to speak back to me. I'm going to listen now, right? And I'm going to duplicate what you're saying. And that's actually, communication is a two-way flow. How many of you have ever been in a classroom or an instructor and it's all one-way flow? I remember I had this microbiology class in college, and we had a professor who was gosh, she was from Europe somewhere, really deep accent. Couldn't hardly understand her. And then when you start talking about like all the like Greek they're talking to you, like it was like, this is horrible. And I remember I always sat right about there in a classroom. It was the second row, slightly to the right of the room. And I remember looking behind me, and we had like 150 people in our class, 100 people in our class, something like that. And 90% of the people were sleeping. And I was like, oh my God, like, how can this person keep talking with the whole classroom sleeping? You know? And there's a few things with that. If you're one way flowing, how do you know if that person is duplicating what you're saying and understanding it? That communication goes two ways, right? So in your report of findings, the Business Academy created this report of findings based on a two-way flow of communication. Before, when I was doing the report of findings, it was all one-way flow. So I had no idea where my patients were at as far as, were they jiving with me on what I was telling them. I wasn't asking questions. I wasn't seeing if they were duplicating what I was saying. Okay, that can greatly affect your closing rate. Because here's the thing that happens. There's three barriers to learning. And this is something that you learn. How many of you have taken study skills for life from the Business Academy? Anyone? Oh, I'm telling you, if you haven't taken that, that's life-changing. There's three barriers to study. And one of them is first is the misunderstood word. So how many of you have been reading a book, you get to the end of the page and you go, I don't know what the hell I just read. And then you go back to the top and read it again. And say, I don't understand this. And then you give up on the study. And part of that's because, in schools, we never teach people how to study. If you think about it. So when you are one-way flowing with people and you go past a word they don't understand, what happens is they'll go blank. When you go past a word that someone does not understand, they stop processing. Like if I said the children became very frightened when the crepuscule came about, what would you think? I'm sorry? But by what? It's something, right? I don't know what's a crepuscule, right? Well, if you break that word, it just means when darkness comes, like when the sun drops down, right? So it's like all they're saying is that the children become afraid at night or when it comes dark. See the difference? See, if you don't actually define things, so like when you're talking to a patient and you say subluxation, you know what they're thinking? I went to the doctor today and they say I have some type of submarine in my neck. They're not following you. You have to break it down. You have to dumb it down. You realize that the average person has an 8th grade education. That doesn't mean they didn't go to high school and graduate. I'm saying that their comprehension is 8th grade level. How many of you guys think that maybe there's been a dumbing down of America in the last few decades, right? Okay, so, you have to communicate with people in a way that they understand, which means that you have to have create affinity, reality, and better understanding. And that this is like, you have to have a two-way flow of communication. Okay. And you have to ask questions through your report of findings process. That's how important this ARC triangle is. Okay. So this is the reason why when you maybe had problems studying is because you're going past words that you didn't understand. Okay. I had my kids. So for those of you that I don't know if this is still the case or not. Back when I took this course, we would actually provide it for kids at no cost. My kids went through that study skills for life course when they were in middle school. It changed. You know what? I didn't really put this two and two together, but I stopped going over their homework in middle school. I stopped reviewing stuff. I stopped, it's just like, it was their education, but they learned how to use a dictionary. They learned how to, there's a gradient to learning. Okay. And they also learned that if they didn't understand something, like they needed to maybe add some mass to it. Like That's a fake plant. If you read fake plant, you might think, what's that look like? That looks like that. You show mass. Like if you talk about a green tractor and you never been on a farm and you don't know what a tractor is, but someone showed you a picture of it, then you would comprehend it, right? So there's different barriers to study. So for your kids, if they're in that middle school or older and you want them to really get better grades, I mean, my kids had straight A's from that point forward. One didn't have to work as hard as the other, but they went on to college, graduated. I have one in law school right now. It's and I don't say that to impress you. I just say that to impress upon you that if you give the tools to learn, man, does life change. Comprehension goes way up. Okay. All right. The ARC triangle. These three different words, affinity, reality, and communication, do not seem on the surface to have much to do with each other. A little thought will discover that your affinity with another person will have something to do with your ability to communicate with him or her, but how these two are related to reality is not so easily seen. As a matter of fact, these three words have an extremely close and interesting relationship. Since each of these three aspects of existence is dependent on the other two, anything which affects one of these points will also similarly affect the others. It is very difficult to suffer a reversal of affinity without also suffering a blockage of communication and consequent deterioration of reality. So you guys, back in the math days, what's an equilateral triangle? They're all equal, right? What happens if you increase the angle or the side of one of them? Well, what happened in equilateral, if you increase let's say you went from 30 degrees to 45-degree angle, they all increase, right? So the concept of this ARC triangle, if I just take 1 point on the triangle and I work on that and I increase that, guess what happens to the understanding and the communication? It's huge. One of the first rules in sales, there's a lot of first rules, but this is like a major first rule. Write this down. Always, always, always agree. That does not mean you agree with that person, with what they're saying, but can you agree that you understand why they might feel that way? Man, does that break down barriers. You want to create a barrier? Just disagree with someone. You want to create an ARC break? Just disagree with them. The affinity goes out, the reality goes out, communication goes down. Does anyone have a rift with a family member? Does anyone have a problem with someone in your family that you don't communicate much anymore? There's an out reality somewhere right there, right? So then there's no communication, there's no reality. You want to patch things up, you just get into an agreement. So ARC breaks, an ARC break is pronounced by its letters ARC, is a sudden drop or cutting of one's affinity, reality, or communication with someone or something. Upsets with people or things come about because of lessening or severing of affinity, reality, communication, or understanding. It's called an ARC break instead of an upset because one discovers which of the 3 points of understanding have been cut. One can bring about a rapid recovery in the person's state of mind. Huge. So one of my big, so when I joined the Business Academy, so when I took this Report of Finance course, one of the things that happened was I was seeing around 125 visits a week, and within a couple of years, I was seeing 600 visits a week. And it was because of, just the communication skills that I was learning. And one of the biggest things I talk to my providers about is like, don't talk about yourself. Like, it should all be about the patient. Like, what's the most beautiful words to a person? Their own name, right? So get good at knowing people's names. And the other thing is like when you're table talking with the patient, you should be talking about them, their condition, what's going on with them, what you're doing, what the goal is. Now, what happens if you're talking about yourself through this treatment cycle? If you're just saying, hey, what you're doing on the weekend, or Have you seen that before where the doctor will just talk about, oh yeah, I went hiking, or I went skiing, or I did this, I did that. Like they just, you develop this bond where you just have this flow of communication. But what if you actually start talking about things that maybe the patient doesn't quite agree on? Think they're going to tell you? Probably not. They're just going to leave quietly. This is why the old say, what don't you talk about in business? What have you heard before? Politics and religion, right? Don't wear your political affiliation gear to work. I mean, it's just something that, unless you're really, really good at communication. But I mean, it's like the best thing you can do from a table talk standpoint is always talk about the patient, what's going on with them. What are they doing? That was one of the things that was interesting. I think one of the things that really built up our office was because I got really good at this. I would know everything about that patient. I'd forget their name. I'd see them 10 years later walking on the street. I'd still know everything about them, and they wouldn't even remember my name, which was fine. I mean, it was more of it's a cognition of mine right now as I'm going over this, that's how powerful this ARC is, and making sure you're talking about them. Okay. So how do we restore ARC once it's broken? And then we're going to go over lots of different examples here. Fortunately, the spiral works both ways. When you raise one corner of the triangle, that will automatically raise the other 2 points. Anything which will raise the level of affinity will also increase the ability to communicate and add to the perception of reality. Okay. Unfortunately, the spontaneous incidents which cause affinity, reality, and communication to increase are not as common as the incidents which break affinity, reality, and communication. The old saying, united we stand. What's the next part of it? Divided we fall. Yeah. So the point of this is not to, it's not a form of manipulation communication. This is a form of how to effectively communicate so that you actually create higher ARC. So there's more understanding, there are more agreements. Okay. So let's look at some examples of where you see this in an office. If a patient came up to the front desk and said, I don't want to follow those recommendations at 3 times a week I just don't have time to do it. I need to change my schedule. What would the front desk say? Sometimes they'll say that. They become reasonable. We've talked about that before. One of the things is to have a successful practice is you cannot get reasonable, meaning getting into agreement with what they're saying. But how can you communicate with that person? So the first rule is what we went over. Agree. I completely understand it's a busy schedule to maintain. Now I can actually go from there. You first agree, hey, I completely understand that it's a busy schedule, right? However, you said that you wanted to get the best possible results when you came in here, and that's what you hired us to do. So what can you do to make this go right? You put it back on them. What can we do to actually keep your schedule so that you get the results that you want and we want for you? So you always agree first, then you can go off that, So that's one way. What's another example? What's a way that you use this in your practice before? Is this jiving with everyone? Too early in the morning? Is this making sense? It's powerful. It's really powerful. And the more you groove this stuff in, the more success you'll have. Have you ever noticed, I remember reading a story before of it was like a parable. Man walks over the hill and sees a small town below him, and he looks at it and goes, "Oh, that's a dungy kind of shit ass town," you know. But he went in and didn't really like the town much, and no one spoke to him. People were rude. He's like, "Man, the people in this town are rude. This place sucks." And he didn't stay there very long, and he moves on. Next guy goes over the hill and goes, "Oh, that's a really nice small town. It's charming." Goes into the town. People are engaging with them, communicating with them. And he stays an extra day or two just because, it's great. Friendly people, two totally different perspectives, right? Have you ever heard what you put out, you get back? How many of you done this before? Someone pulls out in front of you and you lay on the horn. Have you guys ever done that before? Any guilty parties of that? What do they do? What's that? You're number one. They hit their horn back at you. They start yelling at you. You didn't do anything but you cut me off. You didn't do anything wrong, did you? You're just letting them know, but you're upset the time you hit on that horn. But they get mad back at you. So when you put out anger, guess what you get back? Anger. You put love out there, what do you get back? Love. It's just what you put out there is what you get back. So you put affinity out into the world, you get more affinity, reality, and more communication with the world. You guys following me on that? I mean, it's so important in your practices and more so in your family life and your social life. But, you master this concept and you guys will explode, because patients go into the doctor's office these days. The doctor's with them for a few minutes and writes them a prescription and doesn't know anything about them. There's no communication hardly. This is how many of you ever get like, "Oh my God, I've never been to a place like this before. It's like the best." Do you guys get that? It's because you're already communicating better than the average, medical office with people. This will just take it to a whole nother level. So what are some examples you guys see just with increasing ARC in your practice, case management, or when you're treating a patient? I'm sorry? The tour. Yeah. Tour. Increases, ARC with the patient when you're showing them around and letting them see what you guys do.
The patients would often introduce themselves and take them back themselves.
Mm-hmm. Builds trust right away, right? So we don't have a mic, so I'll repeat back what you guys are saying just because the people at home may not be able to hear. So examples were that were just given us, like giving an office tour, the doctor going and introducing the patient at the front desk. That's the first. That's the. Listen, it takes an average of 8 to 12 touches to get someone started on care. It takes 8 to 12 touches to actually get someone in your office, on average, from a sales perspective. Yeah. Sure. It was said introductions, giving a coffee, tea, warm introduction. Yep. Builds ARC. Yeah. I always, like, when I engage with the patients, I always look for something I can like about that person. And you want to be genuine. How many of you have seen a bullshitter before? People know when you're bullshitting, right? Like you acknowledge or you say something nice, but you really don't mean it. It's just like, it's not authentic. So obviously be authentic, be real with it, Yeah, you really.
You love yourself.
Oh, yeah. Whiskey, cigars. So, yeah, it's when you practice these things with people, and this is stuff that you want to drill in your office, and how to get into effective communication. Okay. So, chat. I can't see the chat on here. Yeah. Thank you. So I guess I could have done that. But it's really small print compared to the other room. You're talking to a 50-plus-year-old person who has to use readers now. It just sucks. I had 20/20 vision, and then all of a sudden I hit 45, and it was like, So what are some examples? Okay, so let's use AR. So if you're building ARC through the relationship of a patient cycle, and you're doing a good consultation, you're finding out what that patient's values are, you're asking questions, you're learning more about them. That's building ARC. Let's look at how you use this with objection handles, which we're going to get into this afternoon. So this afternoon, what we're going to do is we're going to put a whiteboard up here, and we're going to write down, hey, what objections are you getting in your office, that you may be having a hard time getting past? Okay. And we're going to just we're going to go, hey, how to handle that, different ways how to handle it, but then we'll role play it for a little bit. Okay. So it's, by the way, when you do an effective report of findings, you won't have as many objections. I mean, the report of findings was designed for a layperson to do, not the provider. We don't want providers doing this. They're the worst at this. Sorry. They can get good at it, but you guys have to understand, staff-wise, your providers got into being a chiropractor because they love people, they want to help people, and so what do? They give everything away, or they talk too much. Someone said, "Oh, it's expensive." Yeah, what can you afford? I mean, you never heard that. An oncologist gives a diagnosis and gives a prescription to do something. Does the patient say, "Yeah, I can't afford that"? They might say that, but they end up doing it if they believe in that treatment, right? So if you do a proper report of findings and you have proper flows, your objections will be minimized to begin with. You'll have a few, but they'll melt away very quickly. So, I always like to start with that, because when you are handling objections, if you do a proper report of findings, they melt away very easy with your communication. If you didn't do a proper report of findings, it will be really hard. Okay. So we talked about how there's, we want to overlay the ARC triangle, okay, over this communication. So if a patient says, hey, it's expensive, what do we say the first rule was? You agree. Does that increase affinity or decrease affinity? It increases it. It increases reality. We both agree that it's expensive, and it is. It doesn't matter what your fees are, whether it's $1,000 or $10,000. It does not matter what you're charging. Everyone has a different level of comfortableness on what they spend on things, right? But I want you to understand that people will pay money for what they value. So your job is to build values and to find out what their values are, and for you to value yourself. That's an important component. So when you agree and you increase affinity reality, you're increasing communication, and you're increasing the understanding as well. And when I turn it back on them, I agree it's expensive. First off, most people complain, right? So you treat it like a complaint, and you say, what would you like to do? You ask again. If the money keeps coming up, then you can easily go like, listen, Mrs. Jones, you said your condition would worsen if you didn't do anything about this. How would this be for you? What am I doing? I'm talking about them. My interest is in them. And they'll talk about how it's going to affect them as time goes on. And many times they'll talk themselves right into doing care, but you're maintaining ARC through the process. Has anyone ever gotten angry when you're doing a report of findings? During your report of findings, has everyone had someone get angry at you? Yeah. How about emotional? Start crying? Yeah. You have to be able to sit there comfortably, right? And keep a high ARC. So what are some other ways that what are some other objections that you get, or things that happen through a day 1, day 2 cycle, or through a patient's journey in your office, where maybe give examples where ARC was broken? Have you guys ever had an upset patient? ARC is broken? I know you guys are sitting there. You got examples, because I know no one's perfect.
A lot of times our office and X-ray review is being done by a provider and a regen plan.
Huh?
You've got the knees of a young man. Okay, so the face is good, but look at the after.
Yeah.
And then the face is like, oh, well, I don't need this. Why am I here?
So the example was given of patient in a report of findings, the spaces look normal in their knees, and you present a regen plan because the MRI is showing that their tissues are shredded, but the patient doesn't understand why they would need regenerative care. So it's an out point, right? It's not effective communication. This is the reason why this process is so powerful, this report of findings process. You guys are in the educational business. You're in educational sales. This isn't patient come in, write a script, give it to them, and have them move on their way. That's not what you guys do. You guys have to actually get into really high ARC while you're educating them on what you guys do. That's what builds value. Okay. And the more communication you get into during a consultation, and you find out what the patient's values are, and we'll give examples later today on that, by asking specific questions on how it affects them at home, work, daily activities, what happens is that they start talking about the things that they value that they can't do because of their condition, let's say. Okay. So here's a perfect example of this. I give this all the time. If someone comes in with low back pain's here, and then through a proper consultation, you find out that, their daughter is not going to have them watch the grandkids anymore because their knees are, or let's say it's a knee issue. They have knee pain. They come in for their knee pain, but then during the consultation on person B, let's say, so person A, knee pain, person B, you do a proper consultation. Person A, you didn't do a good consultation. They just have knee pain, and you recommend regenerative services for those of you who do have an integrated practice. So what's the charge for when you guys do a regenerative service, let's say on a knee, what do you guys charge? Okay, $7,694 is an example. We'll take that number. So patient comes in, A, knee pain. Person B, knee pain, but you find out that, they can't go up and down stairs. You find out that they can't squat. You find out that they can't play golf anymore because when they swing a golf club, it tweaks the knee. You find out the worst part of it is they're concerned that their daughter is not going to allow them to take care of their grandkids during the day anymore. And that's their joy of life, because they're afraid that they're going to fall on the young kids because of how unstable that knee is. Okay. Person A, $7,694. You present that care plan for knee pain. Person B, you present that same plan, $7,694, but you have 3 or 4 value points of what they value. Who's going to pay the money? B, right? You're going to get more objections from A, correct? This is the reason. So again, this goes down to building ARC. When you're doing a consultation, you're building affinity reality. The reality is, I can't play golf because of this knee. I can't, potentially can't watch the kids anymore. Those are all reality points for them. And you're getting into agreement with that. Yeah, that'd be horrible. You appropriately acknowledge that stuff. The first place I go to when there's a low closing percentage is the first day. Are you getting the patient's values? Can you guys see how this affinity reality communication weaves into all your communication with the patient? Okay. Here's an out point for chiropractors. I can say this because I'm a chiropractor. How many of you, chiropractors, raise your hands. Who are the chiros in the room? Okay, so have you guys ever gotten to the point where you're so good at your craft that you can fix anything? And to some degree, like you're just like, yeah, just lay down. You know, I mean, when you've been in practice for a while, what happens? You get really good at your craft, yeah, art form, and so you minimize what's going on with the patient. Oh, we've helped people like this all the time. Let's do it. Sign here and here. Let's do this. It totally kills the sales cycle because you bring the patient up the awareness scale too quickly, or you jump a bunch of steps, and it's out reality. Patient thinks it's a major problem, and then you're minimizing it. Then they don't take it as serious, and so then they don't follow your care recommendations. Does that make sense? Questions? We're going to take like a 5-minute break in 2 minutes. Ethan told me to take a break at the top of the hour so you guys can use the we have a lot of bodies here today. So if you have to use restrooms, we want to kind of get you guys in that direction. If you have to use restroom, or if you want some coffee, tea, snack, you can grab that here in about 2 minutes. But any questions on what we've gone over so far? You guys we're gonna two-way communicate this. I'm going to start asking questions directly. Does that make sense? Okay. Good information so far? We start with this because the rest of the weekend is all going to be based on overlaying ARC and all your communication cycles with people. And this is the reason why we continually hear from people that go from like a 30, 40, 50% starting rate to 80 or 90%. You know, I'm telling you, like, the fact that you guys are here, my hat's off to you, just because if you really want to, take your practice to another level, it just takes one idea. You go to a weekend seminar, you read a book, one idea can change your life. I had someone a few years ago tell me they changed one thing when they presented finances. And that one thing was like, they just gave the cost of the program and they stopped talking. That's it. And their closing rate went to like above 80. They had like 26 starts in a row. That was the only difference. I think it's probably more, but that was their cognition, right? But it just takes one idea, one thought. You change one thing. Many of you are one decision away from just popping, making the decision to actually go all in if you are in a position like front desk or a case manager, you're an office manager. I have my executive director of both my offices started off in marketing. And now she runs both offices. Okay. She was a case manager, does a really good job communicating with patients and getting them started on care. So like literally like this can be a career, and you can do very, very well, when you put these systems in and you just dive in. And that's just a decision. I'm going to master what I'm doing, because the thing is that's where your security lies, right? Your security is knowing what, that you do a really good job, right? Because would anyone ever let you go if you just kick ass at what you do? Got to have really high ARC though, right? So we're going to take 5 minutes. You can, again, restrooms, grab some water, tea, coffee, but let's be here at least by like 10:05. We'll go 10:08 right in that time frame. Let's get back here and we'll get started again. All right, let's do it. You guys at home can take a quick break. We'll be back in 5. Awesome. Welcome back. So we're going to go over some examples of how you use this through your day 1, day 2 process. And the whole objective is the higher the ARC that the patient has with you, the more agreements that you make, the more that they're going to want to do what? Start on care, work with you, right? They're going to be reaching, even if there's a money issue, they're going to reach. More compliant, they're going to stick to the care plan. Like we gave an example, like when you find someone's values and you find their ruin, They're not going to stop care when their pain goes away because they know that your whole intention is to improve their function, right? So let's talk about how important appropriate acknowledgments are. So this is a big out point that we see a lot where ARC breaks is not using appropriate acknowledgments versus using appropriate acknowledgments. So when you're doing a consultation and you're asking the patient how it affects them at home, work, daily activities, let's say you're diving down that arena, patient says, well, I can't sleep at night anymore. Now, if you were to say, okay, how else? And you keep moving on, really, what kind of acknowledgement was that? It's okay that you're not sleeping good, right? How about, what if they might be feeling this, but they might be thinking like, does this person really even care that I have this going on? Right? See, what we always say is there's negative acknowledgments. You guys should know 1,000 different negative acknowledgments, but you want to be real, right, with the person. So if the person says, hey, I don't sleep at night, to be like, oh, that's horrible. Shoot, I mean, I don't function well if I don't sleep. How does that make you feel that you don't sleep at night? See, the ruin is the emotional component of why, like, where they're at. You want to find the emotion. So the ruin is that emotional connection that they have on why they're not functioning well or how they're feeling about it, right? So, when you appropriately acknowledge, you're getting into agreement, which is doing what to ARC? Affinity is going up, reality is going up. Yeah, not sleeping sucks. Yep, I agree. That's why I'm here. Really, they came in for back pain. Now they're coming in because they can't sleep. You see how it's like building? Well, how does that make you feel that you can't sleep? God, I'm groggy. I'm grumpy. Not getting along with my significant other. Oh, really? Tell me about that. I mean, that's horrible. I mean, really, what's going on there? Well, I mean, we argue because I'm in pain all the time. I'm not sleeping. How does that affect your relations? We don't have it anymore. Whoa, really? That sucks. How does that make you feel that you're not having intimacy with your significant other? You see how this low back issue has become something much bigger as you're pulling out what's going on with them? You got to have these conversations with people, but you do it in a way that you're building ARC. No one has spoken to them like that before. Okay. So give me some case managers in the room. Any case managers? Okay. Give me some examples of what you've done in consultations before, where you've seen that increased, values that you're getting with the patient. Oh, did we get an extra mic? Thank you.
They're more willing to start care. So like I have a patient right now, actually, she's getting ready to do regen therapy this coming week. She'll do her injection. Her kids got her a new bike for Christmas because their son is getting his first tricycle. Mm-hmm. And she wants to be able to ride with him this summer, but mm-hmm. she can't because of her knees. Mm-hmm. And for her, that is breaking her heart because she's got her grandson. So she's...
Yeah, they're not paying to, she's not necessarily, she's paying for the knee issue, but she's paying for the quality of time that she's going to have with her son.
She was almost in tears, and it almost brought me to tears. And sure. I'm so sorry. It's like, we need to get you back on your bike. We need to get you with your grandson.
Sure. It's a personalized touch, right? It's a personalized touch. It's, when you actually put that care plan out in front of someone and you've discussed their values and what their ruin is and what their motivating factor is, that's when you don't have to deal with objections. Well, they're already at a place where they know that they value what you do. They've increased the value because you are no longer just helping with their knee pain. You're going to help me spend more quality time with my son. It's a huge difference. It's a game changer. Okay. So what other examples, case managers you guys have? Anyone else? Here, you can throw it. The Greek god is like freaking out. That's an expensive piece of tool. We don't have any more mics.
Well, the example that I have is I had a patient who was still pretty young, like in her mid 30s, and she had lower back pain that was so debilitating that her 10-year-old daughter was helping her get dressed in the morning.
Yeah.
So I really dove deep into that and was like, well, how has that been affecting your relationship with your daughter, relationship with your husband, and how's that been affecting your daughter, seeing that, feeling that she has to help take care of you, and you should be taking care of her.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
See, and it builds that affinity, right? This is where you develop a following in your practice because of how you communicate with people, because you're just getting really good ARC. So let's talk about one of the restoring ARC real quickly. Has anyone ever had, in any form of communication, an outpoint, an argument with someone? Does anyone want to share their outpoints? Maybe it's something that's resolved now. Has anyone had a disagreement with a friend?
I'll go ahead with mine.
This is going to get good, everyone. Turn it up here.
Yeah, so we actually had a patient that was as a personal injury patient. And we had been treating her for a while. She was getting rehab therapies, all sorts of, everything that we had to offer. And she came in very, very upset one day because she had, I guess, received a bill and said some very choice words to me and to the ladies at the front. But after it was all said and done, the whole reason was because she had only given us half the insurance information. So through that communication, we were able to rebuild, and she actually continued to care for a little while after she realized that it wasn't a mistake on our end. Yeah. And that we were all trying to be in the same boat to help her. That was. So outpoint, she's upset. You guys got into more communication, not less, right? Mm-hmm. This is something you want to write down. Communication is the universal solvent. Communication is the universal solvent. When you have an outpoint with someone, you don't do less communication, you do more communication. And you find areas to get into agreement. You find area, that builds the affinity, that builds the reality, right? That creates more communication. Any other examples of how you restored it was getting into more communication, right? Correct. Yeah. If we would have just left it at that, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. Exactly. She would have left upset. Yeah. When you look at ARC, the C is the most important part of that ARC triangle. It's that C. Okay. So any other examples of restoring ARC? Maybe if it was broken, maybe an argument with a spouse, a kid, a brother, sister. Any other examples? You guys just get along with everyone. Everything's rosy. Everything's rainbows and sunshine. Everything's blissful right now. No.
We have lack of communication with coordinating, picking up the kids and stuff like that.
With the husband, you mean? Or
the ex, yeah.
The ex?
Yeah.
That's why they're an ex.
Yeah.
The end. What's that? Okay, can I pass that back there? Here you go.
So my ex-husband's ex-fiance came to me and apologized for ditching me a few years ago because she realized that I wasn't the bad person when I walked away from him, that I was right in walking away. And she really apologized and is trying to make it up to me because I was right and she was wrong.
Yeah. So she increased her communication with you.
Yeah.
Right. And when she said you were right, you were validated, made you feel better, higher affinity.
Yep.
You probably like her more now. maybe a little bit more, right?
A little bit.
Got some agreements. Yeah. But it's a powerful tool to use. So it's but let's just face it. I mean, you can get into really good ARC with people, but choose like who do you want to hang out with versus who you don't want to hang out with, right? Because there are, listen, I had a consultant tell me a long time ago, like 25 years ago, they said, Gary, it doesn't matter what you do. 50% of people are going to like you and 50% are not going to like you no matter what you do. So just decide what you're going to do and get on with it. How many of you have ever like cut your reach because you were worried about what other people thought? Let me tell you something. Let me give you a secret. No one's thinking about you guys. They got their own stuff going on. Very little thought is going into you guys outside of what you're thinking about yourself. Right? I mean, it's just get on with it. Treat people well. Get into good ARC with people. Help your community. Focus on helping as many people as you possibly can with whatever you're doing, and focus on delivering a really good service, right? And your business will grow. Any other examples of rebuilding ARC once it's been broken? Anyone ever get into an argument with the parent? Yeah.
I was going to say,
it's on, yeah.
A lot of times we start with a low triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, when people call us, there's so many times when they're basically at their low.
Mm-hmm.
And when they call and then you try to build them up to even get them in the front door. So I think that establishing a relationship over the phone,
mm-hmm.
and I mean, there's so many times when my reasons or my notes for them coming in could be a paragraph or too long,
mm-hmm.
to where, we've started out with the knee pain, we've ended up with all over pain, and, that they can't hike with their grandkids or something. And so it's so important from, when they first call, and, make that initial call, because that's a lot for them. And some people have been dealing with this for years.
Yeah.
But when they make that initial call to feeling comfortable about coming in the door, and then so.
Yeah, that's a great example. So, when a patient calls in, you start building ARC right from the get-go. And that's just, when someone's saying, like, want to make an appointment, you ask them what's going on, they start telling you, you have to use appropriate acknowledgments. I'm so sorry that you have that going on. It's horrible. Our intention is going to be to find out what's going on and see if we can help you. Let's get you in as soon as possible. I mean, it's not acceptable that you feel that way. All that type of language, right? It's like, it goes a long way at creating a high day one show percentage. It goes a long way at creating a good day two show percentage. And it goes a long way at actually having an overall conversion percentage, is how effectively you use this ARC tool. Because it's a tool, one of many. I always go over this, like with for you guys in learning this report of findings process. There are so many tools. Like imagine, I like this example. Imagine a carpenter A and carpenter B come into your house to do like a project in the house. Carpenter A has one tool. They have a hammer. And you fix everything with the hammer, kind of thing. And then you have person B comes with a tool belt full of different tools. They have screwdrivers, sockets, wrenches. They've got hammer. They got a whole tool belt. The Business Academy teaches you all these different tools that you use. So when you go and you communicate with someone, you can be more effective with that individual because you have all these tools versus someone who's just carrying a hammer. It makes a world of difference when you're communicating with people about what they have going on and getting them to see the need for your services to start care, because you guys are on an uphill battle. When you only have 8 to 10% of the population seeing a chiropractor at any given time, and about 92, 94% see a medical provider, and it's not like there's commercials on TV talking about getting adjusted or even doing regenerative care. you know, you got to realize there's more money in keeping people sick than there is in making people well. Would you guys agree with that? That's what big pharma is. They're all about keeping people drugged. You know, that's where they make their money. They don't want people to get well, but that's what people see is this endless commercials, whether it's TV, newspaper, magazines, right? I mean, how many have you have seen in real life what they propose on TV? They have someone running through the fields, hands going through the lilies, you know, and you could die, you know, as you're holding your puppy, you know, taking, you know, this pill. That's what that's what they market to us, right? You know, but that's not reality. Okay. But the thing is, people are brainwashed by that. So you're in the educational game, which means you have to have high ARC, educate the patients in a way that they can experience it. That's the key thing with communication. Communicate with others in a way that they can experience it. And if you have the right amount of empathy for people, you'll have a lot of success in helping a lot of people. Okay. Now, if you break down the people that you help, let's say we break it down into 5 quadrants. 20% of the people that you communicate with, it doesn't matter what you say, they'll start care because maybe they're referred by you and you walk on water in your community, right? On the other end of the spectrum, 20% you don't want in your office. There are people that you don't want in your office because, you know, it's just like there's certain staff members you don't want in your office. They'll taint everything, right? It's like the old saying, like, you know, a bad apple will spoil the bushel or something like that, right? So now the 60% in between, you have to work on that 60%, which means the better that you are at these tools, ARC being one of them. We're hitting awareness scale today. We go over the emotional tone scale. We go over the DEI scale. We go over the flows of a day 1, day 2. There's all these different tools that if you put into play and you understand it, man, you guys are going to just, it's like a rocket ride in your growth. You'll have good problems. You're always going to have problems. I'm going to end with this before we take our next break. You will always have problems, but you get to choose the type of problems that you want. Because in any game that you play, there's always barriers. Okay. So you have to choose, you know, what you have to choose your hard. You know, having a practice is hard. Not being able to pay the bills or meet overhead is hard. Right. Having a busy practice with more staff to manage and a bigger place and having the, you know, higher overhead, it's hard. But choose your hard. Marriage is hard. Divorce is hard. Choose your hard. You know, you guys get to choose. And so, but I think in closing, it's like your communication, like from this morning session, the ARC is super important in developing a high volume practice where you see a lot of people and you help a lot of people, right? And this ARC is the foundation to everything. So we're going to be using it the rest of the weekend. In closing for this morning session, any other questions on ARC? Restoring ARC, building ARC, anything on affinity, reality, communication, understanding, knowing that you move one part of that triangle, right? You increase communication, triangle gets bigger, you have more understanding. You cut communication. How many of you have ever reached out to someone, communicate like text, and you get nothing back? What happens? What do you think? What's going on? What's going on? That person not calling me back. They mad at me? What's going on? Right? Your communication is super, super important. I mean, I can't tell you that like this is the most important information you're going to get all weekend. You're going to get to the end of tomorrow, and it's going to be so much great data, but you're going to come back to what we just covered today and know that this is the foundation to everything we reviewed this weekend. Everything. Okay. Any questions? You want to end on anything? We're taking a break here. You want to end? Do you want to add anything to this, Ethan?
Okay. Wrap you up there.
Is that other mic still on in the other room?
Yes, but it's recorded.
Oh, good.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, I will say, I mean, whether it's front desk, excuse me. Thank you, Gary. whether it's front desk, case management, being an associate doctor table side, right? Biller, marketer, CA. I mean, guys, this is the foundation of what gets, hey, good to see you, by the way. Awesome. This is what gets your patients to say yes, right? How many times you ask the patient, they said something to a patient, they go, oh, they just don't listen to me. I can't force them to do it. And you're like, yeah, we can't force anyone to do anything, but this is the tool we use to get a patient to say yes, to get a patient to go, that makes sense, I'll follow you, to get a patient to go, I'm excited, to build rapport and relationships. And it's any objection handles that me and Dr. Gary cover this afternoon, right? Patients dropping off care, not compliant with care, not saying yes, et cetera, all that. I know all of us want to know, what exactly do I say when a patient says this, right? Have you ever heard the phrase, it doesn't matter what you say, it's how you say it, right? So the scripting we're going to go over this afternoon won't matter unless the foundation is in place, which is what Dr. Gary covered this morning. So with that being said, I know a lot of you guys are ready for your coffee, probably a restroom break before we go into the next segment. So let's go ahead and give Dr. Gary another round of applause. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.